As of April 28th, 2021, the Rockets currently sit at 15-47, which is the worst record in the NBA currently. They're officially eliminated from playoff contention directly after holding the longest active streak for playoff appearances. So how did they get here? What were the mistakes that they made, and how can they improve from here? Do they have to rely on the draft, or do they have talent on the roster already that they could build around? Those are the questions I'm going to answer during today's video. So without further ado, let's get right into it, talking about the mistakes they made. The first one being, and this is not the major one, but the first one being the Russell Westbrook trade for John Wall. This was essentially a swap, which at the time it looked like a good trade, but obviously in retrospect now, Russell Westbrook has been playing far better than John Wall. John Wall is still a good point guard, but I'm not going to blame the Rockets for doing what they did, because at the time it was just two point guards with absurdly large contracts that got swapped, plus the Rockets got a protected first round pick during the process. So at the time it wasn't too bad, but I'm not going to knock that trade too much because of that. John Wall is still a good point guard, but Russell Westbrook has been balling with Washington recently. But the colossal mistake that they made was during the whole James Harden fiasco. They finally traded him. They finally traded him to the Nets, and they got picks. They got picks and pick swaps, but they got no talent in return. They got Victor Oladipo, which that experiment did not work whatsoever. Then they traded Victor Oladipo to the Heat for Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley. So they got no players in return for James Harden. You know, one of the best players in the NBA right now. They got no players. They could have had Karis LeVert, but they opted to say, nah. They probably could have gotten Spencer Dinwiddie. Nah. Jared Allen. Nah. They got no players in return. That was definitely the colossal mistake that they made. But let's talk about, where do they go from here? How do they return back to that playoff contention spot where they are basically a lock for the playoffs for many, many years? How do they get back to that? Because at 15-47, your roster doesn't have much on it. But is there anyone currently on the roster that they could potentially build around? And the answer to that question is yes, the main guy being center Christian Wood. During last year's free agency period, I definitely expected Christian Wood to get paid by a smaller market team, especially Detroit. I don't know why they didn't pay him, but I was expecting him to get a big contract from a small market team, but he just never got that. Then the Rockets gave him that mid-level exception contract. I think it's like 2 years and $19 million. It's like something along those lines. And what a snag. Christian Wood is averaging 21-10 for Houston right now. He's definitely a most improved player candidate. But you know, he probably won't win it, but he's having a fantastic season for Houston. That is definitely the guy that you have to build around moving forward. The only issue is you only signed him to a 2-year contract, and the first year is almost over, and this first year has been a catastrophe. So I really hope they are able to keep him long term, because that would be great. But will they be able to? I really don't think so. But let's look at the rest of the current roster to see if anyone can really sway him over. Let's see if there's any other young talent that could sway him back to Houston. And the main guys there are guard Kevin Porter Jr. and forward jae'sean Tate. Kevin Porter Jr. got cut by the Cavs pretty early this season. He got signed to Houston's G League team and was balling out. He was obviously not a G League caliber player. He was hooping down there. He got called up, and he's been playing kind of well. You know, the stats say 15 points per game, but he's not shooting the ball very efficiently. He is definitely playing well for a second-year guy, but hopefully he gets to the point where he can shoot the ball more efficiently. And then rookie forward jae'sean Tate is averaging 10 points, up as 1.5 steals per game. He is definitely a good defensive guy. And, I mean, plus, if he develops well, he could probably be that Robert Covington type that can play a lot of defense. But jae'sean Tate's not a very good three-point shooter right now. He's more of that mid-range layup guy. But hopefully, if he can develop his three-point shot, he can be a very good building block. So that's kind of the Rockets' young quote-unquote big three right now because they're not that big. They're 15 and 47. But Christian Wood, Kevin Porter, and Jae'Sean Tate are definitely three guys that you can build around moving forward. Those are three good young players, with the main guy being Christian Wood. You have to do everything you can to sway this guy back because he is criminally underpaid right now. He is playing fantastic, and if you can bring him back for a big contract during the 2022 offseason, that would be huge for Houston moving forward. More of their current roster, kind of talking about the veterans. The main veteran obviously being point guard John Wall, who's having a fine season. He isn't doing great. He isn't doing bad. He's going to sit out the rest of the season so he can remain healthy. I believe it's something to do with his ankle. I don't really know, to be honest. I kind of call bullshit. But you're kind of stuck with him. You are stuck with that massive contract for 3 years now. And that's not necessarily a really bad thing. I mean, it is definitely not a good thing. It's definitely not a good thing. But I wouldn't say it's this really bad thing. Oh, no, you're stuck with John Wall. But it's definitely the contract that's bad. And you're stuck with him for 3 more years. So hopefully John Wall can remain to be that good point guard, that kind of borderline all-star type, 18 to 20 points per game. If he can stay there, that would be great. But sticking with point guards, let's talk about the NBA draft, because this is a massive draft for point guards. But the problem is the Rockets might miss out on all of the action, which would be devastating for Houston's future, especially with Christian Wood now on an expiring contract. So where do the Rockets go during the draft? They don't really have a choice. They need to hope they get their pick. That is why they've gone into full absolute tank mode. Worst record in the NBA. You have tied for the best odds to get the number 1 pick. That doesn't always work out, because if you did not already know, their pick is 1 to 4 protected. Basically meaning, if you don't know what that is, if their pick lands in 1, 2, 3, or 4, they do get the pick. But if it falls down to 5, 6, 7, then the Thunder get the pick. So they have to absolutely hope they get that top 4 status. And, if they don't, I'd say bye to Christian Wood, because he's not staying. He is not staying. Kevin Porter Jr., I don't know what his contract is, but now you got John Wall, Kevin Porter Jr., and Jae'Sean Tate. You're going to be bad for 1 more season. But let's say they get that top 4 pick, and do you know what? Let's say they get the number 1 pick, because it doesn't really matter where they're landing. They should be absolutely thankful to get that pick. So where do they go during the NBA draft? Admittedly, I'm not a massive NBA draft guy. I don't know many prospects, so then I'm not going to act like I do. Whatever you do, take the best player on the board. Just no matter what position it is. Let's just say you get the number 1 pick. A lot of people love Cade Cunningham, say he's the best in the draft, then you take Cade Cunningham. If you're higher on Suggs than Cunningham, then you take Jalen Suggs. I get they have John Wall and you're paying him absurd amount of money, but right now, the only position that you're locked in right now is center, and that's Christian Wood. That is your guy right now. You have Kevin Porter Jr., you have Jae'Sean Tate, which it would be great to build around them, but you need Christian Wood to stay. It does not matter what position it is, as long as it's not center. You take best player on the board, and that will most likely be Cade Cunningham or Jalen Suggs. If it's either 3 or 4, I know Jonathan Kuminga, he's a really good forward. That would honestly be a good pick. So I do think getting a forward would be nice if they do get that 3rd or 4th pick. So you can kind of have John Wall, Kevin Porter Jr., Jae'Sean Tate, whichever forward they want to draft, and then Christian Wood. That would definitely fill out the roster better, but it doesn't fucking matter. You take the best player on the board. That is 100% what they should do, and that probably wouldn't put the Rockets where they need to be, but it's a great step. So, yeah, to wrap this video up, what they need to do moving forward is build around Christian Wood and pray to fucking God that he stays. Pray to God that he's tired of bouncing around the league like he has, and offer him as much money as possible. Just keep Christian Wood. That's what you need to do, and hope that you get that top 4 pick. Because because, I mean, you're not guaranteed to have a pick this year, and that is awful for the worst team in the NBA right now. That's going to do it for me today. If you enjoyed this video, share it with your friends, leave a like and comment something. I don't really give a shit what. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed and have a great day.